today. So we have part 2 to our question from yesterday, which was, what is the abomination of the desolation? We got halfway through. Now it's time for the rest of the answer.
So yesterday we noted the historical fulfillment of this prophecy by Jesus in Matthew 24, when he said, "When therefore you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand, let him flee." And what happened was, when the Romans came and they camped around Israel, they were camping in a 2-mile exclusion zone around the city where no trade was to take place by Gentiles on the Sabbath day. This was called the holy place. When they saw Romans with their gods standing in that holy place, they recognized it was time to flee. They left the city. After the Romans left, the Romans came back after the Christians had left, and no Christians were lost in the siege of Jerusalem. That's a historical application. But with Matthew 24, of course, the disciples are asking about the second coming of Jesus. And so they want to know, more details about what this is actually all about. And to understand that, we're going to flick back over to Daniel chapter 8, where this is spoken of. In verse 13, it says, "I heard one saint speaking to another saint, which said, that certain saint which spoke, how long shall be the vision?" Now, in some translations, such as the one I'm reading from here, the King James Version, there are some added in words that are not in the original. So I'm just going to leave those out because they're not in the original. How long shall be the vision concerning the daily or the continual and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. And so what you have here very simply is 2 kinds of desolation. You have the continual, the daily, the always there desolation. Paganism has always been there as a desolating force in the world. And then you have this new form that comes along, which is called the transgression or the abomination of desolation. And so transgression, obviously, if something or someone is going to transgress, they need to break something. They need to be in a good place and able to do that bad thing. So that, your continual desolation has always been bad, but this one comes about as a result of transgression. And this is talking about the abomination of desolation that stands in the holy place. Paul picks up this theme over in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. So if we flick over to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 very quickly, we can read about it here. In verse 3 it says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, the return of Jesus, will not come unless there comes a falling away first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." Here we find the Antichrist sitting in the holy place, so to speak. And so what we find here with the abomination of desolation, not only does the abomination of desolation refer to the events of the Roman soldiers around Jerusalem, but it also refers to the Antichrist. When the Antichrist sits in the center of God's church, when he puts himself forward as, the Bible describes here as the son of perdition. That was Judas. Judas was the son of perdition, and he was one of the disciples who was closest to Jesus. He looked the most righteous. He helped the poor. He said all the right things, and yet he was corrupt at his heart. And the Bible says at the end of time that we need to be aware of those who come in as wolves in sheep's clothing. They look like sheep. They sit in the center of God's church, at the very center of Christianity. They are the ones who are helping the poor. They are the ones who are appearing to do lots of good things, and yet the Bible says that this is actually referring to the Antichrist here. And so we need to understand, exactly who is the Antichrist, what is it that is taking place at this particular time point.
Thank you very much, Lyle. That was part 2 to that question.
Part 3 tomorrow.
Do we mean tomorrow's a week?
There's still another aspect of this.
Give us a call if you have a question. Our number here is 1-800-FAITH-FM. Thank you, Lyle, and we look forward to, the next part.